The night skies above Earth were no longer safe, no longer quiet. For thousands of years, humans had looked at the stars with wonder. They had written songs, drawn maps, and dreamed of distant worlds. But now, the stars held something else. Fear. One evening, every screen on Earth flickered alive. Phones, televisions, radios, and satellites all carried the same message. A voice, deep and cold, thundered across the planet. It was not human. It was not kind. People of Earth, you are nothing before the Dominion. You are weak. You will kneel, surrender your freedom, and serve us, or be destroyed. The words were not just heard. They were felt, heavy like chains pressing down on every heart. Cities froze, families stopped their dinners, children stared at the glowing screens. Old men and women whispered prayers. The whole planet listened. The image that came with the voice was worse than the words. A fleet of alien warships, massive and endless, hovered in the blackness of space. Their metal gleamed like knives. Their engines roared like storms. These were not explorers. These were conquerors. For a moment, silence swallowed Earth. The threat was clear. Surrender and live as slaves. Resist and be burned from existence. Many felt fear. Some leaders trembled, imagining fire raining upon their cities. Some whispered that perhaps surrender was wise, that survival was better than defiance. After all, the Dominion was not one world. It was thousands, stretching across the galaxy. They had conquered species far older and stronger than humans. What chance did Earth have? And yet, among the fear, something else stirred. It began quietly like a spark in dry grass. A soldier clenched his fists. A scientist whispered to herself, "No." A mother hugged her child tighter and thought, "Never." Across the world, in every corner, that same spark appeared. Anger, pride, defiance. Humanity had been broken before. They had known empires, wars, famine, and plagues. They had been knocked down countless times. But never, not once in history, had they bowed to stay down. They always stood again, always. The Dominion had expected quick obedience. They thought humans would kneel as countless other species had. But Earth was different. Earth carried scars, and scars were not marks of weakness. They were marks of survival. In hidden bunkers and quiet rooms where leaders met, decisions were being made. Some argued for peace. Others demanded war. But beneath their arguments was a truth no one could ignore. Surrender meant the death of humanity's soul. In the streets, people gathered around giant screens replaying the alien ultimatum. They listened again to the voice demanding submission, and instead of lowering their heads, they raised their eyes to the stars. For the first time in history, Earth felt united. Borders, politics, religions, all seemed small compared to the shadow above. Humanity was not many nations anymore. Humanity was one people, facing one enemy. And in that unity, a secret long kept began to surface. For years, whispers had passed through military halls and research stations, rumors of something vast being built in silence, a fleet hidden from the eyes of the world. Ships designed not for exploration but for survival. The people of Earth did not yet know its name. The Dominion could not imagine it existed. But in the darkness, humanity had been preparing. The ultimatum had been given. The choice was clear: kneel and live as slaves, or fight and risk everything. And though fear still lingered in many hearts, one truth was stronger. Humanity had never been made to kneel. The Dominion did not know it yet, but the spark they had lit on Earth was about to become a fire that would not stop until it reached the stars themselves. The Black Armada was waiting. While the Dominion's fleet stretched across the stars, Earth had been quietly working in silence. Long before the ultimatum came, whispers of danger had reached humanity. The galaxy was not empty. It was filled with empires, wars, and tyrants. Humanity knew one day the stars would bring not friends, but conquerors. So, in the shadows of peace, they began to prepare. It started with secret councils. Nations that had once argued now sat at the same tables. Old enemies shook hands, not out of love, but out of necessity. Survival demanded unity, and unity demanded silence. Engineers, scientists, and soldiers vanished from the public eye. They were not gone. They were working where no one could see them. Deep beneath mountains, under oceans, inside hollow asteroids, there humanity built something the Dominion would never expect. They called it the Black Armada. The name was not spoken loudly. It was carried like a whisper between those who worked on it. It was not meant to be a symbol of terror, but of resolve. These ships would be humanity's shield and sword. They would be the line between freedom and chains. The shipyards were unlike anything on Earth before. Caverns turned into forges. Oceans hid dry docks the size of cities. Even the moon carried scars of construction, hidden from all but the stars. The ships were different from Dominion warships. Where alien vessels gleamed with bright metals and banners, human ships wore no colors. They were black, darker than the void itself. Their armor swallowed light. Their engines whispered instead of roared. Their weapons were not made to intimidate. They were made to kill. Each vessel was born from sacrifice. Resources meant for comfort were diverted. Families sent their brightest children to serve in silence. Engineers worked until their hands shook. Pilots trained in secret simulators, learning maneuvers no alien had ever imagined, and all of it was kept hidden. The world above went on with laughter, markets, and life. But in the deep places of Earth, the future was being forged. Captains were chosen not for fame, but for spirit. Men and women who knew fear, yet refused to bow to it. They were taught that their ships were not just machines. They were promises. Promises that Earth would not kneel. Promises that humanity would endure. Every member of the Armada carried that weight. They knew their names might never be remembered. They knew their lives might end in the cold of space. But they also knew this. If they failed, Earth would belong to the Dominion. The training was brutal. Pilots learned to fight with speed, with cunning, with desperation. Admirals studied the patterns of predators, wolves, and hunters. Humanity did not have the numbers the Dominion had. They would never win by brute strength. But they could win by being clever, by being relentless, by being unpredictable. In the silence of the shipyards, a new kind of warrior was born. Not just soldiers, not just astronauts, but guardians of an entire world. Years passed. Ship by ship, the Armada grew. Battleships, cruisers, frigates, each one painted black, each one armed with weapons hidden from the eyes of the galaxy. Humanity's secret fleet was not counted in hundreds, but in thousands, and still the Dominion knew nothing. When the ultimatum finally came, when the Dominion's voice demanded Earth to kneel, the secret was ready. Hidden fleets waited like shadows at the edge of the solar system. Crews stood at their stations, silent, steady, their eyes fixed on the stars. The people of Earth still trembled with fear, but the Armada did not. They were waiting for the order, waiting for the moment to rise from the dark. The Dominion believed they had come to a helpless world. They thought Earth would fall without a fight. But in truth, humanity had been waiting for this day. The Black Armada was not just a fleet. It was the answer, and soon, the galaxy would see it. The Dominion had expected Earth to answer with silence or surrender. They waited for messages of apology, for voices begging mercy. Instead, the planet was quiet. Too quiet. No ships of surrender rose. No ambassadors crawled forward. Only silence. Then, on the edge of the solar system, the silence broke. Dark shapes emerged from the void. At first, the Dominion scouts thought they were shadows, tricks of space. But shadows did not move with such precision. Shadows did not burn with silent engines of blue fire. The Black Armada had arrived. Thousands of ships drifted out of the blackness. Their hulls swallowed starlight. Their movements were sharp, disciplined, like a single living beast. They carried no banners, no colors, no signs of weakness, only darkness. On the Dominion command ship, officers sneered. To them, humanity was still a newborn species, barely crawling into space. How could such a world build a fleet that matched their might? They laughed, certain this armada was a desperate trick. But laughter turned to unease when the first human strike came. Without warning, black frigates shot forward. Their weapons flashed like storms, cutting through Dominion cruisers before shields could even rise. Explosions ripped the silence of space, tearing through ships that had never been challenged. The Dominion had always fought enemies who cowered. Their fleets moved slowly with arrogance, certain of victory. But the Black Armada did not fight like prey. They fought like predators. Human ships vanished into the void, only to reappear where the enemy was weakest. They struck in packs like wolves tearing at the flanks of a giant. A Dominion destroyer exploded, then another. Human torpedoes ripped across their lines, leaving trails of fire in the endless night. On Earth, billions watched the battle through hidden channels. Their fear mixed with awe. For the first time, they saw the armada that had been whispered about for years. For the first time, they saw humanity standing, not begging. The Dominion was shaken. They had expected to crush a helpless world. Instead, they bled. Their ships burned. Their commanders shouted in confusion, but the Black Armada paid a price too. Every victory carried sacrifice. A human cruiser, surrounded, fought until its hull splow. Its last volley destroying 3 enemy ships before it vanished in fire. A squadron of fighters dove straight into the Dominion's heart, giving their lives to open a path for others. And yet, the Armada did not falter. The crews knew why. They fought. Behind them was Earth, its children, its families, its future. They would not retreat. They would not kneel. Hours passed, and the battlefield became a graveyard of fire and wreckage. Dominion arrogance had been torn apart by human steel and courage. For the first time in centuries, the mighty Dominion was forced to retreat. When the last alien ships limped away, the void was silent again. Silent, except for the black silhouettes of human warships standing victorious. On Earth, cheers erupted across the planet. People wept, laughed, and shouted to the skies. For the first time, they believed. For the first time, they knew they had a chance. But the admirals of the Black Armada did not celebrate. They knew this was only the beginning. The Dominion had seen Earth's secret. They would come back, and next time, they would come with fury. Still, one truth now burned in every heart. Humanity could fight. Humanity could win. The first clash was over. The galaxy had taken its first glimpse at what humans truly were. And in the darkness of space, the Dominion's commanders whispered to each other in disbelief. The humans are not prey. They are predators. And the war had only just begun. The first battle had been won, but victory came with a heavy price. In the wreckage of space, human ships drifted silent, their hulls cracked, their crews gone. Families on Earth wept as names of the fallen began to appear on secret lists. The Black Armada had proven that humanity could fight, but every captain knew the truth. This war was only beginning. The Dominion was vast. Their fleets numbered in millions. They had conquered entire galaxies. Humanity was only one world, holding one fragile line. And yet, no one spoke of surrender. Inside the black warships, the crews prepared for the next battles. Engineers worked without rest, patching holes, replacing weapons, and dragging wounded ships back into the fight. Pilots who had lost friends strapped themselves back into their seats, their eyes hard with fire. Every man and woman knew the cost, but they chose to pay it. The Dominion returned quickly, this time with greater force. Their fleets were larger, heavier, filled with warships designed to crush rebellion. They wanted not just victory, but vengeance. They wanted to make an example of Earth. The battles that followed were brutal. Stars became firestorms. Human ships fought against impossible numbers, often outnumbered 10 to 1. Every clash was a storm of light and death. The Black Armada fought, like no enemy the Dominion had ever faced. They did not march in straight lines. They did not fight with blind honor. They fought with cunning, with desperation, with the fury of those who had no other choice. A small squadron might lure an entire Dominion fleet into an asteroid belt, sacrificing themselves so hidden bombers could strike the enemy's heart. A single frigate might hold its ground against overwhelming fire, its captain refusing to abandon his post, giving others time to escape. Again and again, human lives were traded for victories, and with every sacrifice, Earth endured. Back home, people lived under the shadow of war. Mothers sent their sons and daughters into the Armada with tears but also with pride. Children grew up watching the skies, knowing their futures depended on those who fought above. Cities rationed food and power, giving everything to the fleet. Humanity, for the first time in history, was united not by fear, but by determination. Teorai. Dominion could not understand this. To them, sacrifice was weakness. They ruled with fear, and they expected fear to break Earth. But they did not know the human heart. When a ship was lost, Earth did not tremble, it burned hotter. When families grieved, they did not beg for mercy, they demanded justice. Each loss made humanity stronger, not weaker. Admirals of the Armada carried those losses like weights on their shoulders. In dark rooms, they studied maps of stars, planning strikes that might cost 100 lives to save 1,000 more. Their eyes were tired, but their resolve was unshaken. They knew they were outnumbered, but they also knew something greater. Humans did not fight only to win. They fought because surrender was unthinkable. One battle, remembered in whispers, showed the heart of humanity. A human battleship, broken and surrounded, refused to yield. Its captain sent one last message to Earth. "Tell them we stood. Tell them we never bowed." Then the ship ignited its own engines, ramming into the Dominion flagship, taking both vessels into fire. The story spread across Earth, across the Armada, even across enslaved worlds watching from afar. Humanity's defiance became legend. The war raged on and the sacrifices piled higher. But through the blood and fire, one truth remained unshaken. Earth still stood free. Humanity still refused to kneel. The Dominion had thought fear would break them. Instead, sacrifice gave them strength. And as long as even one black ship still sailed the stars, humanity would not fall. The fire of war burned bright. And in that fire, the soul of humanity was unbreakable. The Dominion thought Earth would break after the first waves of battle. They believed that the fire of sacrifice would burn humanity into ashes. But instead, the opposite happened. Every defeat turned into resolve. Every scar became a reminder. Humanity was not breaking. It was hardening. The Black Armada grew more dangerous with each fight. Captains who survived battles carried new wisdom. Pilots who had lost friends fought with sharper instincts. Engineers learned to rebuild ships, faster, stronger, tougher than before. Each clash with the Dominion was not just survival, it was a lesson. And humanity learned quickly. The Dominion, vast and arrogant, began to stumble. Their fleets were enormous, but they were predictable. They fought with the same formations, the same strategies they had used for centuries. Against most species, it worked, but not against humans. Human admirals fought like wolves. They struck where the enemy was weakest. They refused to fight on Dominion terms. A small group of black ships might vanish into a nebula, only to appear behind enemy lines, tearing apart supply convoys. A single human cruiser might bait a massive fleet into chasing it, straight into a trap where hidden torpedo ships waited. The Dominion had numbers, but numbers meant nothing against human cunning. Slowly, battle by battle, the tide began to shift. On worlds far from Earth, whispers spread. Species long enslaved by the Dominion heard of the humans, the world that had refused to kneel. They heard of battles where human ships, outnumbered 10 to 1, had still claimed victory. They heard of captains who fought to the last breath, not for conquest, but for freedom. Hope, something forgotten for centuries, began to return to the galaxy. The Dominion noticed. They grew desperate. Their commanders sent even larger fleets determined to crush Earth before rebellion spread further. Entire armadas, enough to blot out the stars, descended upon the black ships. And yet, The Armada fought on. There was one battle remembered as the Battle of the Broken Moon. The Dominion sent a fleet of colossal warships to destroy a human outpost hidden on a shattered moon. The Armada arrived late, outnumbered and cornered. For 3 days, human ships fought in the cracks and shadows of the broken moon. They used its fragments as cover, weaving in and out, striking fast and disappearing. By the time the Dominion realized they were being hunted, half their fleet was already gone. When the battle ended, the shattered moon burned with wreckage, and the Black Armada still stood. Humanity had not only survived, they had humiliated the Dominion in front of the galaxy. The message was clear. Humans were not prey. Humans were not weak. Humans were something the Dominion had never faced before. On Earth, the news of these victories spread like fire. Families still grieved, but now they also smiled with pride. Children spoke of growing up to be pilots. Cities painted murals of black ships against starry skies. Humanity had begun this war with fear. But now, they carried hope. And hope was more dangerous than any weapon. Across the galaxy, enslaved worlds lifted their eyes to the stars. They saw Earth, one world against an empire. And they realized something incredible. If humans could resist, so could they. Quiet uprisings began. Chains were broken. Dominion supply lines were attacked by rebels who had once lived in silence. The Dominion's greatest weapon had always been fear, but now that weapon was crumbling. Fear was turning into courage. Courage was spreading like wildfire. The Dominion was still mighty, still vast, still powerful. But for the first time in ages, they were no longer certain of victory. The tide was turning, and at the heart of it, carrying the weight of every battle, every life, every hope, sailed the Black Armada. The storm had begun. The Dominion had ruled. The galaxy for centuries through fear. Entire civilizations had been broken. Worlds had forgotten what freedom even felt like. To most, resistance seemed impossible. Kneeling had become a way of life. But then came the humans. At first, they were dismissed as stubborn children, a young species too foolish to know when to surrender. But every battle, every sacrifice, every victory told a different story. Humanity did not kneel. Humanity fought. And in fighting, they gave others something the Dominion had long stolen: hope. Whispers spread faster than the Dominion could silence them. On mining colonies, enslaved workers shared tales of black ships that struck like shadows. On farming worlds, slaves spoke of captains who fought to the death for free. Dumb. On prison planets, whispers turned into chants. If Earth can fight, so can we. The galaxy was waking up. The Dominion tried to crush this spark before it grew into fire. They tightened their grip on their slaves. They sent more fleets to hunt the Black Armada. They declared Earth an enemy of all life, warning that those who followed the humans would share their destruction. But the more they threatened, the more the galaxy resisted. The Black Armada became more than a fleet. It became a symbol. To humans, it was survival. To the galaxy, it was rebellion. Wherever human ships appeared, enslaved people dared to rise. They threw down chains. They sabotaged Dominion supplies. They joined the fight with whatever weapons they had. One world, long enslaved, dared to openly rebel when a squadron of black ships arrived in orbit. The Dominion sent an army to crush them, but the humans stood beside the rebels. For the first time in generations, that planet's sky was free of Dominion banners. The people wept in the streets, shouting to the stars, "We are free again." The news spread like lightning. Freedom was no longer a dream. It was possible. For the Black Armada, the war grew heavier. They were no longer fighting only for Earth. Now countless worlds looked to them for strength. Every victory gave birth to more uprisings, but every uprising called for help. The Armada was stretched thin, its captains weary, its ships scarred, and yet they kept fighting. The Dominion began to crumble from within. Their empire had been built on obedience, but now rebellion rose in every corner. Fleets sent to destroy Earth were called back to suppress revolts. Soldiers who once obeyed without question began to hesitate. The humans had done the impossible. They had broken the chains of fear, but the cost was high. The Armada lost ships in every battle. Brave crews gave their lives so others might live free. Whole squadrons vanished in fire, but their sacrifice fueled the courage of those who followed. One battle became legendary, the liberation of Dareth. The Dominion had used the planet as a factory, forcing its people to labor for centuries. When the Armada arrived, the Dominion deployed a fleet 3 times larger. The fight lasted days. Human ships burned one after another, but they refused to retreat. In the end, the Dominion was forced to withdraw, leaving the planet free. When human soldiers stepped onto Dareth's soil, the people fell to their knees, not in surrender, but in gratitude. They called the humans not conquerors, but liberators. From that day, the Dominion's grip began to truly weaken. Every victory for the Armada was a victory for the galaxy. Chains were breaking faster than the Dominion could repair them, and the message carried across the stars was simple and unshakable. We will not kneel, neither should you. The empire of fear was dying, the galaxy was rising, and at the heart of this great storm, leading the charge, was humanity's Black Armada. The Dominion's capital loomed ahead like a storm cloud. Its steel towers reached into the void, and its defenses stretched across the stars. Entire fleets guarded the planet, each ship bristling with weapons capable of annihilating worlds. To any other species, this would have been the end. To humanity, it was the moment they had trained for their entire lives. The Black Armada gathered in formation, black ships blending with the darkness of space. Pilots checked their engines, captains reviewed their plans, and soldiers whispered prayers or songs of hope. No one spoke of fear. There was only focus, determination, and the knowledge that this battle would decide the fate of the galaxy. For years, humans had fought the Dominion. They had lost friends, worlds, and ships. But they had never lost heart. Every sacrifice had led them here. Every scar on their hulls, every tear in their hearts had strengthened their resolve. The first salvo erupted like thunder. Human ships dove through the Dominion's outer fleet with speed and precision. Explosions lit the void as ships collided, fired, and vanished again. The Dominion responded with fury, sending wave after wave of their deadliest vessels. Yet the Armada moved like a single living thing, striking weak points, exploiting every flaw, refusing to retreat. In the midst of battle, one human battleship faced a fleet 10 times its size. Its captain knew the odds were impossible, yet he pressed forward, striking the enemy's command ship. Explosions shattered the surrounding vessels. Though his ship was torn apart, his mission succeeded. The Dominion's defenses faltered. On Earth, millions watched in silent awe. People who had feared for decades now cheered in hope and pride. They saw what humanity could do when it refused to kneel. They saw the Black Armada carrying the courage of an entire world. The battle raged, for hours than days. Space became a storm of fire and metal. Ships disappeared in explosions only to be replaced by others, relentless and determined. Every human vessel was more than steel. It was a promise. Every soldier was more than a fighter. It was a guardian of freedom. And then, at the heart of the Dominion, the final push began. Human admirals coordinated perfectly, striking from multiple directions. Torpedo swarms, fighter squadrons, and battleships converged like lightning. Dominion command ships erupted in fire, and communications went silent. The great empire that had ruled through fear was falling. The Dominion soldiers realized too, late, that Earth had not just fought for itself. It had fought for every enslaved world, every oppressed soul, every planet that had once bowed to tyranny. The galaxy had risen behind them, inspired by human courage. When the last Dominion fleet was destroyed or fled, silence fell across the void. The stars no longer carried fear, they carried freedom. The Black Armada floated among the wreckage, battered and scarred, but unbroken. Humanity had not just survived. Humanity had triumphed. Soldiers who had lost friends and worlds wept with relief. Pilots whispered the names of the fallen. Captains stood at the helm of shattered ships, feeling the weight of history in their hands. They had done the impossible. They had freed the galaxy. On Earth, the people looked up at the stars and knew something miraculous. Humanity had faced annihilation, yet had refused to bow. Humanity had brought hope where there was none. Humanity had sent the Black Armada, and in that moment, the galaxy remembered what it meant to be free. Chains were broken. Knees rose from the ground. The voice of Earth rang out across the stars. We will not kneel, and neither should you. The Black Armada, dark and silent once more, returned home. It was more than a fleet. It was a symbol. A reminder. A promise. Humanity had faced the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known, and humanity had won. The dawn of freedom had come, not from diplomacy, not from surrender, but from courage, sacrifice, and the unbreakable will of one small, determined species. The stars would never forget the day Earth sent the Black Armada.